So what's that old saying? The definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. That is the vicious cycle that we are in Pokemon right now. So welcome back. I started this series, Chaos Rising, partially because obviously the set that just released, but also every new set, it's causing more and more chaos that's even bleeding into the Japanese market. Today we're going to talk about a topic that's probably going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, because every time Pokemon products are hard to find, every time we see an empty shelf, and every single time the price spikes, we instantly have to blame somebody. And it's the same villain every time: scalpers, botters, resellers. Don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here saying these people don't exist. They do, it's very clear. But honestly, I think we've reached the point we're asking the wrong question. Because while everybody's blaming scalpers, very few people are actually asking, what is Pokemon's role in this situation? And before you go grab your pitchforks, hear me out on this. Because let's go ahead and get into this with something that does not make any sense to me. Over the last few years, Pokemon has been boasting, and everybody's been telling us, that Pokemon is dramatically increasing production, right? In fact, multiple respected voices inside of our community has said those exact same things. Yet somehow most collectors can't find products. Stores can't get allocations, and popular releases are instantly disappearing. And this same shortage seems to happen over and over again. Now, maybe I'm crazy, but if production is increasing, why does availability always seem to be getting worse? That's the question that seems really interesting in figuring out, don't it? But instead, we get stuck in the exact same conversation and the exact same cycle. The new set's going to get announced. The card reveals show up shortly on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Social media starts going into a frenzy. And then all the nice little pre-order posts start coming up. And then products start disappearing. And then everybody says the scalper ruined it. But let's stop for a second. Do you honestly believe if scalpers disappeared tomorrow, that collectors would be able to get all the products they wanted? Do you think if scalpers disappeared tomorrow, that all store owners will all of a sudden get allocations? Respectfully, I don't think so. And that's why I believe it's time that this conversation gets bigger than scalpers. Because realistically, this problem appeared way before resellers even entered the picture. For instance, have you noticed over the last couple of years, the way new releases are being released has changed dramatically? We don't get those big giant waves anymore. Instead, we see a little staggered release in multiple waves. Uncertainty around future availability, questions about reprints. I mean, let's face it, the last 10 sets, they haven't reprinted one single booster box. You see a ton of questions about allocations, and you see a lot of store owners complaining that they just didn't get any allocations, or very little allocations. There's so many questions about restocks. And what does all this uncertainty create? You guessed it, the fear of missing out, FOMO. Because I will tell you this, the second a collector believes they're not going to be able to get something later, they will start buying immediately. Not because they're a scalper, but because they're nervous and they're scared. They're scared the next person's going to get there first. They're scared the price is going to go up tomorrow. They're scared they may not actually be able to afford it at all. Because let's face it, some of these new releases are at prices that is just not economically friendly. And it's out of a lot of people's budgets. Honestly, can you blame them for being scared? This market trained them to be that way. Now, I ain't trying to put my business hat on for a second, because I have talked to distributors, I've talked to many different store owners. I'm trying to build an LGS from the ground up. That's right, an actual LGS. Been paying attention to the way the market moves, trying to figure out what products make sense, while at the same time trying to serve my customer base. And the one thing I've realized, product availability is far more complicated than your average consumer realizes. Because a customer is going to see an empty shelf, but a store is going to see allocations. But guess what? A distributor is going to see demand. And somewhere in the middle, everybody's going to blame the other person. And in reality, it's uncertainty that exists at every level of the chain. And when that exists, guess what? Prices are going to move. Demand's going to continue to spike. And you guessed it, chaos is going to take over. And here's the part I really want people to think about. If overall Pokemon production has increased, but yet English collectors still feel like they can't get English products, maybe the conversation needs to shift from how many cards are being printed to maybe how the cards our reach into market. Maybe it's about release timing. Maybe it's the allocation structures. Maybe it's just demand is outpacing supply, right? Or maybe it's a combination of a lot of different things. Whatever the answer is, I don't think the scalper did it fully explains the story. And look, I'm not saying Pokemon is intentionally creating this scarcity cycle. And there's no tinfoil hat on, so I'm not saying there's this giant conspiracy. And believe me, I'm not saying scalpers and resellers are innocent. But what I am saying is the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So every time a major release happens, we deal with the exact same outcome. Maybe it's time to stop looking at the people that's buying the product and start looking at the people, and maybe start looking at the structure surrounding the release itself. Because if we don't, when the new Rayquaza set comes out, guess what? We're going to have the same conversation. When the 30th drops, we're going to have the same conversation. All next year with Kanto, Johto, all the new sets coming out, we're going to have the exact same conversation every time. It will be over and over again, and nothing will ever change. So maybe scalpers are part of the problem. Maybe bots are. Maybe resellers are. Maybe investors are. But I still don't think that's the entire story. Until we start asking about release structure, allocations, availability, and how this stuff is reaching the market, the chaos isn't going anywhere. But what do I know? I'm some random guy on the internet and just giving you my opinion. Let me know what you think down below. What's your thoughts on this chaos? Now, if you like this kind of content, please consider liking and subscribing. But I'll catch you in the next video.